everybody. This is Jeff Barber with the Maine and the City of Santa Clarita. Tonight's New Heights workshop or panel discussion is called Money and Music. And I'm sure all of you out there have all kinds of questions and thoughts about money and music. And we're going to talk with a few people that are heavily involved in the music industry and have wrapped their heads around the idea of money and music in a variety of ways. And we're going to introduce the panelists right now. The first is Emily Zuzik. And Emily, can you talk about yourself a little bit for us?
Sure. I am a Los Angeles-based songwriter. I am a performing artist. I am a session singer. I work in commercial music. I write music for TV and film. I have a lot of projects that are not only in LA, but all over the country and even the globe. I work with a couple people in London pretty frequently where we're co-writing tracks and getting, pitching them. And another one that's in New York is one of my writing partners. And then I have a few around LA. So Zoom is becoming the new normal in weird ways, but it's opening doors too, because now you're not limited so much by when you can make the travel happen. A lot of times people can just carve out the time and get together and write tunes or, pitch ideas or take meetings. It's a new sort of world out there. Yeah. And since most of my stuff went from mostly live performance about 10 years ago, whether it's in cover bands or my own projects, between the focus on licensing as well as just life changes for me personally, I've moved to a lot more studio stuff. So I have a home setup for, vocal tracking and, sketching out ideas on MIDI or guitar. And then I have a number of people who have studios that I've worked with in LA and, just the idea of flying tracks back and forth. So that's a little bit about me.
Great. Hey, Matt Starr, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, sure. Session drummer, touring drummer. I'm a career coach for musicians and artists and also entrepreneurs, and I'm a producer.
And Tommy Peacock, say hi.
Hey, how you doing? I play in my own band and we play quite a bit. It's about half of what we were doing before. I also have a kids music company where I made my own original album and, play for kids and I just try to play for everybody, really. And I have a new original band called The Peas. So that'll just be coming out probably on Monday or Tuesday. So with a music video. So yeah, doing a lot of things.
Well, welcome everyone. So New Heights, for these talks, usually, we pretty much cover the basis for someone that's just getting into music or just getting into filmmaking. But we also cover bases with regard to people that have been doing it for a while and they haven't really paid attention to a certain subject like money and that subject. So when we discuss this topic, keep in mind that a lot of people will have little experience, some will have a little more experience, and others will have a lot of experience, but are gaining, they would want that little light bulb to go off, one little nugget of something that you guys say that will be helpful. And that's why we do these things to help folks out there in whatever industry, music, theater, film, etc., to improve their chops. So question number one, and I'd love to hear Emily begin on this, is there's that idea of being comfortable setting your rate and i.e. kind of knowing your worth. And I'm curious how you each have determined that. And I'm sure there's different kind of avenues where you have different rates, but as a musician, as a creative person, how did you develop like what you are worth? If Emily, you can start and then followed by Matt and then Tommy.
Well, I think when I first started out, I was solely doing original stuff or playing in cover bands just to kind of get the feet wet and figure out what I could do. Because a lot of times you kind of grow up doing it, but you don't do it in front of people. And then you're like kind of getting your feet wet, maybe do it for a while, maybe take some time off. And then you're like nervous and, or you're doing it a lot and in the case with me as a singer, and then you hit a bump like, oh, now I have nodes and I have to go on vocal rest for 10 days and I have to go on a steady case of prednisone and, like to not have to deal with surgery. So there's that self-care aspect too, that sometimes is something you learn. Like you learn kind of what you can do. You learn how to keep what you can do at its top form with self-care. And then you start to build up a repertoire or a resume. I mean, the resume is, I think, the hardest part because different personalities go about this differently. I was always very interested in like, I want to make some art and I want to be indie and I don't want to deal with like the label hocus pocus and kowtowing to be what they want you to be. Like I've always been a bit of an independent in that way. And, it's for better or worse. But over time, you meet people, you work on projects collaboratively with people, and people are like, oh, I see what you can do. Let me call you for this. And you get enough of those that happen. And then you suddenly have like your resume. And then that's a big component. And then once you've done in your resume some stuff that's on a higher level professionally, then you have to start doing your homework. Because one of the things I found was, okay, I've been doing this 10, 15 years or whatever. Like, I don't know what the rates are. And I'm like, well, that's really dumb because there are professional rates that are set, especially in the case of like SAG singers or even just, people in the biz at that point. So you make a couple calls or emails and say like, hey, I got asked to do this job. It's not, it's at this level. What is the common rate? Like producer friends of mine have been helpful in that way. And, it's totally variable depending on if it's just a pitch for a demo or if it's a final deal and you're negotiating your rate. Like get the rate card, ask around. I know a lot of that is set in stone because a lot of people who are players, more instrumentalists are already in the musicians union. I'm sure that's a readily accessible information with an easy Google search. And you just have to be flexible too. Like, what do you want to take on? Do you want to take on this project because you're really behind it and maybe there's not a lot of money behind it, but you just really want to do it? On the flip side, maybe you're like, it sounds pretty cool. Maybe I'll settle for less and it'll be like a total nightmare, but you learn from all those experiences. So that's my story to that question.
And from my experience, it seems like other musicians, people in the industry, they're not secretive. If you ask them and have a conversation about stuff, it doesn't seem like there's I'm not going to tell you how much I charge for the most part.
Are like that, then call someone else. I mean, I've definitely met people who are super tight-lipped about their contacts. I'm the opposite. If I meet someone, I'm like, oh, you got to talk to them, and here's their emails,
Yeah.
Because when you build the spider web of connections, it all comes back to you. Someone's going to remember you, introduce them to someone else. Yes. And if you put out good intention and you're not a pain in the butt and you respect everybody's time, like, people remember that and they're like, oh, I want to work with them. Maybe they're not a total fit for this project, but maybe they'll be a fit for another one.
Yes.
And I don't know.
Right. Matt, can you talk about the idea of knowing your worth and establishing, what your rate is?
Yeah, and I would say like knowing your worth is more of a spiritual quest, and setting your rate is something completely different. I think there's a lot of myth, especially for any kind of beginners or new people that are trying to navigate money and art. They're two separate things, and one doesn't affect the other, or it doesn't have to. So if you're asking for money, it doesn't mean you're not a true artist. That's a bogus thing. The only people that put that forth are people that don't want to pay you money. I have a theory that this was probably started back in the 15th century or something, when they wanted to have somebody come and sing or juggle, and they said, well, I want to get paid. And they said, well, I guess you're not a real juggler then. You're not really in it for the juggling. You want money. And so that was just somebody who didn't want to pay. So in the beginning, I just kind of said, I had no clue, so I was focused on, well, what do you want to pay me? And then once I started making money, someone would pay me a little more. I'd say, okay, so then that's my rate. And then someone pay me a little more. I go, oh, that's my rate. And then eventually I started raising my rate once I got comfortable doing the work. And then, ultimately the shift for me was not thinking about what can that person afford. So I didn't look at their shoes and then come up with a rate based on what kind of shoes they had. It was, what do I want to get for my time, and that was, whether I felt worth it or my self-worth. I just put all that aside. Again, that's personal work I can work on. Some days I feel worth it. Some days I don't. You know what? I know how to do what I do, and it has a value. And the great thing about raising my rate, and I do this, in my coaching, I'm always pushing people to raise their rates, and they get so uncomfortable. And the fear is always, I'm going to lose clients. And I say, just do the math. Like if you're a guitar teacher and you got 10 students and let's say $50 an hour. Okay, cool. You raise your rate to 100. You can lose half your students, do half the work, and make the same amount of money. So math is your friend when you're trying to figure out a thing like that. And then for session work, when I started pushing my rate up, I thought, well, what does a guy who makes that much money, what do I offer? And I realized it's an experience as much as a drum track. And I've heard that back from clients, like dealing with you was great. Your communication was great. So many times, someone would say, I got a couple of drummers I'm talking to you and I wanted to see what your rate was. And sometimes I give them the rate and go, ooh, that's a little more than the other guys, but okay, I think I'll have you playing a track. And then like 2 days later, they go, you know what, this guy didn't get back to me. And I'm like, who's not getting back to somebody who wants to pay them money to play music? But okay, so do you mind doing the other 2 tracks, or would you be okay doing the whole record? Of course, so it's an experience that I'm offering as much as it is a drum track or anything else. So
yeah, that's a great way to think about it. Not only, okay, I'm drumming and you're paying me. I'm drumming, but I'm also going to be great to work with, and it's going to be totally fine, and I'm responsible, and that you figure into your value.
Yeah, and as I'm a hired gun, so I'm not a member of any bands that I work with, but I remember being an artist, and they want to feel like you're excited. They want to feel like you get it. I want to know the lyrics. I want to know what it's about. So that'll affect how I play drums, but it's a better experience for that artist because it's trust. It's trust with the money, but it's also trust with their art, their song. And if someone only has a certain amount of money and they're going to give it to you and you're going to cut a drum track and hopefully it's going to be good enough or great or what, that's a lot of trust. So you got to, I really want to build that so they feel comfortable. Plus I get nervous when people are nervous and uncomfortable. So it's just better if I kind of like help everybody to feel comfortable.
Yes, totally get that. Tommy, can you talk about the idea of knowing your worth?
Well, I think you got to ask yourself, what are you comfortable making? Sometimes I deal with venues a lot and I don't want to ask too little because you don't want to be that, and you don't want to ask too much. You don't want to offend people, and you go right in the middle and then you raise it just a little bit because that puts me on a pedestal to kind of really earn the money. And, it makes them respect me because I'm not, gonna do it for way low, but I'm not gonna charge you too much, and yeah, I mean, you just learn as you go because I've just been making more money and more money and more money each time. And each situation for me, what I do is different. So you just kind of got to weigh everything out. And at the end of the day, I would rather work than not work. And I'm building towards a big thing. If I go play a good show, maybe I meet a couple other people and they like me, and then they invite me to their house. And then I make twice the amount of money. So, you're learning all the time, and you're just out there promoting yourself, with the boots on the ground. That's why I feel like I'm doing good, because I'm even more now, I'm willing to do anything, any gig, because I feel it's important to get the next one. And I like to work.
Yeah. So when you're approaching let's say an event, a festival or whatever, do you ever do some homework ahead of time to kind of figure out what their kind of going rate is?
A little bit. I mean, I'm starting to, know how much tribute bands get, and they're the bands that, everybody does tribute bands. My band doesn't do tribute, we do a variety. I think people want a variety, so
Yeah.
I'm starting to get gigs where, there's just tribute bands. So I'm starting to learn how much they get paid. So it's exciting because I'm starting to make more money, in the private thing. And there's just so many places to play, especially in Southern California. There's just so many people. So you just got to get out there and do it,
Yeah. Matt, can you talk about negotiating? Because that's definitely a big part of this and Tommy alluded to that, where there's this kind of dance. The more experience you have, I would imagine the more confident you are with knowing how this dance works. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. Again, in the confidence part, I don't know. Maybe not. I was doing a workshop and like a 14-year-old girl said, "Where do you get the confidence?" I said, "If you were in my head, you wouldn't think I was that confident. This is what I'm here to do, and I just do it, And so again, that's sort of a separate thing when people are trying to, well, when I feel confident, then I'll do. No, do it and let the confidence kind of catch up to it. On session work, I don't really negotiate. I have my song rate and I have my day rate. And if someone has, the only time I would is if there's another value in there for me, So like what Tommy's talking about, okay, I'll do this gig because it's going to be money, but it's also could be more opportunity. So, you might want to gauge that maybe it's someone else is involved that I want to work with. So I might factor that in a little bit. But I do just, if someone says, "Hey, I'd love to have you play on some tracks, like, what do you charge?" I tell them my rate for one song, and then let them say the rest. Because they go, "Oh, so I got 4 songs, so that's your rate times 4." And I just go, "Yep." Now, if they said like, "Hey, could you cut me a little break because I want to do a record or 5 songs?" Sure. But if they don't offer that, I don't offer that. So I think a real important thing too is to just like quote the rate and then just period, end of sentence.
Yeah.
Which can be hard to do. It's much easier text and Facebook Messenger,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
get some exclamation points in there to show enthusiasm. And then, so I don't have to see the person's reaction, or, I can just hit send and then just leave it,
See what happens.
Yeah.
Right. Emily, can you speak to the idea of negotiating rate for
Sure.
what you do?
And part of it is the process of learning. Like, I've settled for things that were less than what were, industry standard. Part of it was ignorance of not knowing what the industry standard was. Part of it might have been like, I really want to work on this, or I really want to work with this person, so I'm willing to give a little bit because it will lead to, or it will potentially lead to more work. Sometimes it is also, you might be able to work in an avenue. You can work in an avenue of, hang on, you gotta go.
Where are you?
You can work on an avenue of being artistically involved in the project. So that's that. Excuse me for just a moment.
Okay. Tommy, you want to talk about negotiating?
Well,
Since you brought it up.
today I was on the phone with someone, and I think I could have done a little bit better, because she's like, "Oh, we just talked to this band and they wanted to charge $12,000, and that's just too much for us." And I was like, "Oh, wow, $12,000, I mean, what I just said to you is nowhere near that, You just, sometimes you gotta, what part of town are they calling from? Where's the gig at? Like, as bad as it sounds, like, do they got money or do they not got money? Who's paying for it? But you definitely learn, you just got to ask a couple questions. You got to think about it. Usually when people say, "Hey, I want to hire your band," I say, "Okay, here's my card. Email me tomorrow." So I don't do it on the spot. So I have a little time, a little buffer to think. And then, obviously you can take your time with an email. But, I'm at the beginning stages of this. I haven't been kind of doing what I'm doing for that long, but in the amount of time I've been doing it, I've done really well. And now I've just got to do it all over again because it went away.
Right. Right.
I mean, 2020, it was like I had 29 gigs in March 2020. So,
wow.
Now it's like half that, but it'll all come back, but the money is better now. So I just figured I'm going to come out of this bigger, better, stronger.
So when you're going into a negotiation, do you really try to get the venue or the individual to offer you something first, so you kind of know where they're at? Is that a strategy?
I think I say it first. But again, I want to work. I'm not going to do something silly. I'm not going to do some, coffee shop stuff, like silly money or whatever. But I want to get my musicians paid. It's another day getting paid rather than not getting paid. And I just really enjoy it, just because the better money I make, the better guys the more I can demand out of who I work with, the better musicians I can get.
And do you have a kind of a bottom end? Oh, you want us to play 3 sets that are 45 minutes long, and you have like a bottom end, like.
Sure. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. But I will say this, like, I went out to Arizona to do some gigs, and the first couple times I went out there and the first time I paid my band, I didn't make any money, but I did it on a gamble to see if I could get the next one more money. And I did. And then I got the next one more money. So I had to sacrifice a little bit, but then I booked 5 weekends at that money, so it worked out. But I had to.
That was what Matt was alluding to, again, providing the great experience and the music, but the experience too. You're easy to work with, and everyone, it flows well, and you were responsible and all that. So that's the gamble going. We're great, and we're cool dudes, and it's going to be a great show, and they're going to want us to come back, and that was the gamble, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right on. So talk about, Matt, if you could, about the idea of discarding the myth of integrity versus compensation. That idea of, in the punk rock world, is selling out, but people got to make a living and make records and shows and eat and all that. So, but can you talk a little bit about that idea of, for someone, a young band coming up right now, or individual songwriter, singer, songwriter, and that idea of that myth of integrity versus compensation?
Yeah, I mean, all my heroes are rich, or they were, when they died, right? So in the beginning, it was like, I like Brian Jones and Johnny Thunders and Sid Vicious, but those guys they're dead and they're broke, And that was like something with my psyche. Like, I like going like, oh, they could have been, if Brian had stayed with the band, if he hadn't drowned in the pool. What about Keith? How about you make Keith or Ron or Mick, a David Bowie, Jimmy Page, these people that are incredibly talented and incredibly successful, So I had to have that shift and kind of examine like what was up with my thinking around that. Because the guys with the cool haircuts, I mean, they're usually broke. It's rare, which is why like Ronnie Wood and, Jeff.
Do I have a cool haircut?
You can wear anything. You got it. So it was like style over substance, and that was kind of how I grew up with that idyllic thing. But it is a myth. It's a full-on myth, and if anyone tries to tell a musician or an artist that they're somehow not committed to their art or their music because they want to get paid, again, that person just doesn't want to pay you. That's all. And I remember getting a call from a young musician who had reached out to me, and he was like, let's just get together and jam. And I was like, I don't really jam. I mean, I'll jam with Ace Frehley at sound check. We'll jam, sure. But you want to get in a room and just sweat. I'm not interested in doing that. But so he said, well, don't you ever just play for fun? And I had to think about that. I was like, well, Jesus, do I? And it's like, no, playing with Mr. Big at Budokan in front of 15,000 people, that was a lot of fun. And I got paid. He was asking, don't you ever play for free? He said fun, but when I thought about it, he meant free. But it got me because I'm going, well, geez, do I just play for the fun of it? And it's like, yeah, I have fun when I work. I like the people I work with, and so, yeah, just again, so much of this is keeping things separate, keeping things separate. So the business is separate from the music.
Yes. Emily, can you speak to the idea of myth?
Oh yeah, the jam.
integrity
Come on out,
versus-
singers night. You only
Jam
have
it
to
out.
pay for a few drinks and the Uber to get you there, or risk a ticket driving back if you've had a few. That's a big thing in LA, the jam. I never really got it because by the time I got to LA, like I always joke, like I got to LA and found out a week later I was pregnant. So I didn't really, I didn't have that, like, I'm in my 20s, I have no cares in the world, I'm going to go out to all the things and meet people. And I get it from the perspective of I'm new in town and I need to meet people because there's potential work that could happen. But yeah, the whole, you should come out and just sing for free on my showcase. I'm like, why would I want to do that? Like, especially at this point in my life, like I have only so much time that is mine, solely mine. And I am just trying to be super respectful of my own time as well as to others who I choose to work with. We all only have so much time, and I choose not to burn the wick at both ends to just hang out. I know that I've worked a long time, both as an artist as well as getting the business side of it together, to know that I'm at a certain level within the community of musicians you can choose from. And I'm worth more than just a free jam, or a free session or whatever, or like for the fun, all these phrases that I was picking up on Matt's thing. And, it's all true. It's taken a long time to get there too, but it's almost coincided with my view on a lot of things as I get older. I'm less worried about the looking cool or the selling out or all those things that, fly around in the teens and the 20s and things like that. And just being like, I have a job to do. I'm good at my job and I want to do it and I want to be recognized for it. So I have to set boundaries for myself. I think another thing that was brought up was like, you state it and then you end it. It's like, or if someone asks you, like, no is a complete sentence, you get to say no. I mean, you don't have to belabor it. And so I just try to do less loosey-goosey or things like that. Like I like to work with people I know. I like to take a chance on people who seem to respect my time and my rate. And I also, I like to, sometimes take chances on things in hopes that something bigger will come along, but I just don't have tons of time to do that these days. So that might change over time as people need me less, or they're, push and pull, like everybody's schedule changes over time. And then of course there's the pandemic, which was like thrown on all of us. And we had to kind of figure out what we could do given the global situation. People got creative. I know I did. I did a lot more co-writing and a lot more things that were just not in my hat, a couple years back. I'm like, oh, so now I do a lot of that stuff. And oh, maybe that's, a series of choices I made. And who knows if I'll go back to doing lots of live performance or not. Or even just doing things that aren't music, in some cases. Like I have other careers that they ebb and flow as well. I'm freelance and everything. So I have to look at each day and say, where am I at? And what do I choose to do and what are the consequences of those choices?
Now, you said you have been doing some writing with folks all over the nation and all that. Are the rates still similar, or has it changed because it's virtual? Is there some weirdness
Right.
going on, or?
Like I've never been in a room where I got paid to write. It's always been like artistic stuff. And then, but I've had situations where I've worked with some of my writers who are also producers, where I'm not paying out of pocket for production. I'm producing my own vocals, they're producing the track. And then a lot of times, since I've been a little more, dive into the licensing thing than some other artists I've worked with, like I then get on my Rolodex and be like, hey, I've got this catalog of songs. Are these something you'd be interested pitching TV for film? So then you're looking at like a down the line thing. And it's a different income stream. It's a different way that I've played my hand.
Right. It's all about relationships,
It's always about relationships.
nurturing them and potential future things and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right on. So I'm going to take a left turn and talk about pay to play. And this is for those those bands that are kind of out there now and they want to play at the Whiskey and they have to sell tickets, or the Viper Room. I want to start with Tommy and then go to Matt, and then Emily can finish up with that. Your thoughts on that process. Never do it, maybe do it. It's an interesting experience.
I think, I would never say never, but look at kind of what's going on, even in Hollywood or whatever. A lot of those venues are not, they're going to die in a little bit. Bands aren't as big as they were 30 years ago, 20 years ago. I don't know. It feels weird. I've done it. I've done it probably 10, 15 times. You hand somebody $800 and you go play your set, and then they don't treat you very good. I mean, it's a tough thing, because you could play the game a little bit, I'm sure, but at the end of the day, if you want to play music, you can't just keep playing music forever without making money. I want to tell, people that are doing the things that I did 10 years ago, 15 years ago, start your business now, whatever that means. I go out and I play covers, sure, I play covers, but I'm still selling myself, I'm still making money, I have a business. And if I can pivot here, pivot there, if the crowd's rocking, I can throw in my original song, maybe not. If you really want to do it, I mean, you just money is important, because the more money you make, you have a little bit more power. You have a little bit more say. You can maybe go record your record. But pay to play, who knows? I mean, I guess if you feel like you want to do that, I guess go do that, because there's no perfect way, I mean, I've sold 80 tickets in a week. I mean, that was years ago. That's hard to do, to hustle like that. But what I do now is harder, keeping all these. I have 9 different musicians over the next month and a half, just because people are just getting busy, so I just got to stay on top of it. But I don't know about pay to play,
Okay. Matt?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we used to do, back in the day, when I lived in Connecticut, because there were venues that would get national acts. And so if you wanted to open, you had to sell tickets. And there was one place, the Webster Theater. I know I've heard of this before, but whoever sold the most tickets went on before the headliner, and then it tiered down from there.
Yep.
So you couldn't even, you didn't even know when you were going to play. So that was a good motivator to sell tickets, and I think most times we ended up, getting in right before the headliner. But look, you do what you got to do. I mean, again, my position now as a 50-year-old man and a dad and someone who's been in the business for the length of time I have, and a hired gun, is different than when I was 20 and I had a band and we were going to take over the world. Like, do what you got to do, man. sell those tickets. And the truth is too, if you guys have enough momentum and heat, you'll be able to sell those tickets. And a lot of times it was, you got to sell 50, but we're going to give you 75. So you just give us the money for 50. And it's like, okay, sell the extra 25 and now you're actually getting paid, So, I agree with Tommy. There's no right or wrong. We all know plenty of artists or bands that really have no following, and they just go, here's the $800. We're not even going to bother with the tickets. And okay. And then they get to say that they opened up for so-and-so and they put that on their bio. And, so again, you got to make a determination if it's worth it for you guys,
Right.
You got to think it's a little wrong. I mean, I think, but it's just, California, Hollywood, it's just kind of where we live. Everybody's like, I got to play here. I got to play the Troubadour. I got to play here. I mean, those venues, they're making money on their advertising up above the venue. I don't know. I think it definitely diminishes the what a musician is worth, because we got to be worth something. It's hard work. You got to get out of LA. People will pay you. People will give it up to you. You got to get out of LA if you want to be in a band.
I was when I moved up here to Ventura, where I live, I was amazed that all the bars paid the bands to play, because I was doing Hollywood things and all that, and it was always shelling out money or no money, but you're opening and whatever, So I give a shout out to Ventura, because to this day they pay bands, and it's really refreshing. It's not like a heck of a lot of money, and it's always kind of a magical percentage of the bar or whatever, but it's something. So just my own personal experience. It's nice to get out of the LA area and go to places where they appreciate the music maybe a little bit more. There's more of a tradition to help out bands.
True.
Emily, what do you think about pay to play?
Well, I've done it. I've not had tons of full band experience in LA, but it works on the songwriter side too, whether you're going to strip it down or whatever. But because it's funny, because my time in New York, I'm in LA, and my time in LA has very much been molded by what do I realistically have time to do, and what do I have the money to do it with? Because when I was in New York, I had a couple of side jobs, not in music, that made good money. So I never had to worry about paying my band. And then it took the pressure off. So then it was like a weird balance, what I was making from where, and, it was like a big stew. Out here, I found that there's only so much that I want to take on of, do it for experience or whatever. So gutting out of town is huge. And then on the songwriter side, when I say songwriter, like the singer-songwriter side, there's this whole world of the world of vineyards, the world of, private events. So the world of playing at a real estate open house, really weird combinations of things that are they're basically private events. And so you're making money. If you're doing it at a place like a winery, you're already dealing with usually a clientele that is at a higher price point than someone who's just going to a dive bar show. So then you have to sell your merch without anyone taking a take of it. You meet a lot of people who are like, I really like your voice, and I have this thing, or have you ever sung something for weddings, or, just oddball requests, because you meet all kinds of people there. And so it usually leads to more other lucrative things. And so that's when I have been playing live, I've been trying to focus on a little bit more of that, because it seems to justify the time and the effort I'm putting in to do it. Playing the bars with a full band, it doesn't make me money. I don't write the kind of music that is going to bring in huge amounts of people. I write music that does way better, licensing for TV and film, it's just that. And I realize that now. That's another thing I had to learn. It's I'm not going to get there doing this. I might get here doing this. So, but for a band starting out, listen, when you're coming in with nothing, you got nothing to lose, right? So you might as well take a chance. And if you feel dirty and you don't like it at all, then like, don't do it again.
Mhm.
Feel like, oh, I learned something from this, whether it's about yourself or where you want to go as a musician or a band, then, maybe it's worth exploring. So it really is, there's a bit of the soul searching spiritual aspect to making these choices and where you are in your life, what you need to do, what you have commitments to already, and just not trying to take on more than you can really do.
Mhm.
So.
Great. Tommy, you talked about, and Emily talking about the various types of venues, and you had mentioned earlier, and I know that you play everywhere and anywhere, as long as it's worth it to you. But can you speak to that, or just the idea of that
Well,
just it's kind of exploded, like wineries and all sorts of places.
I mean,
have music.
I'm learning every little place of Southern California. I mean, there's just spots everywhere. I just played a gig. There was a different gig. It was at the Hyatt in Valencia, and I had to do, dance moves with these professional dancers. It's a total different gig I never done before. And from that gig, I got a call on Monday, and then I'm going to do like the grand opening of the Assistance League up in Santa Clarita.
Right on.
So there are gigs where, people want music, and that's when you can kind of, a lot of those are like solo. You can do a little bit more of your vibe, but people are accepting to it. A lot of times you think, oh, it's just covers, but people want to hear good music. If you're good, you go out and you can play your stuff. You can get paid. But yeah, I played 2 months of gigs this year in Beverly Hills, playing for a bunch of little Paris Hiltons. Just a gig. I'm just trying to, but that's like my kids' stuff, bringing all the toys and stuff. But I'm able to do a lot of them at a high level. So I just do them,
Yeah.
whatever
And
comes my way.
it's interesting. All of you have this diversification of you have these talents, and then you've diversified in various ways and realized, okay, I can do this, and I feel great about that, and I can do that and that, and you all have these some similar, but also some differences too. And it's like Emily said, it's kind of that journey and discovery, and sometimes you just have to kind of sit down and think about, or maybe an opportunity comes and then the light bulb goes off and you're like, gosh, I never thought about wineries. There's a whole industry in Southern California that, a new opportunity perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about, if you could, Matt, about the business end, because we are talking about money and music, and money is definitely the business end of things, and really thinking about the music, your band or your own personal project as a business. And a lot of people don't really do that. They don't do the homework on the side of the business side, so they know rates and various things with regard to unions and all of that. Can you speak to that as far as getting up to speed and knowing what you need to know?
Yeah, I would, echo what Emily said about just asking around, do your research. And I always would ask people who were far more successful than me. So don't ask your friends. If your friend is driving a car in worse shape than yours, don't ask them, right? You don't want their advice. And even if especially if they've been at it longer, but you seem to be doing better, I don't want that person's advice, Jerry Seinfeld had this joke on his thing. He never did it on a special. He didn't think he could tell the joke, but he said, if you see two homeless people talking, you got to realize one of those guys is giving the other guy advice, So, and he goes, I don't think I can do that joke. Chris Rock goes, no, you could do that joke. But anyway, the point is, it's really important who you're talking to, and I found musicians to be really, candid about what they charge and why. And I've, in the beginning too, I reached out to people that were way more successful than me. And they eventually go, okay, let's go to lunch. And they would just talk I wouldn't even ask them questions. They just start talking about what they're doing, and I go, okay, I'm just going to listen, you know, and then say, yeah, and then I got this gig, and then this guy, he said this, so I said that. I'm just listening to how their mind works and how they would do things. So it really is having a business mindset. I mean, business and art and music are literally two sides of the different sides of the brain, right? So math is one side, and you know, painting is another side. So give yourself a break, you know, understand, like, if you're an artist and that's how you experience the world, and you feel things and you're able to interpret that and then make that into music, that's a beautiful talent, but that has nothing to do with business. That's not to say you can't be creative with business, but it's a different side of the brain. So really do have to educate yourself, and it's just getting comfortable. I think the main thing is just talking about money. You know, it's like, it's impolite to talk about money. Why? You
Right.
know, the people that have money are not uncomfortable. And culturally, if you look at different cultures that are typically more successful financially, they talk about money. You know, they talk about money.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think it's really important to just get comfortable with the idea of money, because I think probably most people are uncomfortable talking about money. But if you just have a regular job, you go for the interview, you get the job, and then they say, this is what we can offer, and you can negotiate, and then you're done. Maybe there's a raise at 6 months or a year based on some review. If you're lucky, like Tommy, he's talking about money every day, every single day. Hopefully that phone's ringing and you go, what do you charge for this? What do you charge for that? So you got to get really comfortable talking about that. And, you know, I've been doing this for a long time. Some days I'm comfortable, some days I'm less comfortable, depends on how I woke up or how much I meditate, or it doesn't matter. That's where having the rates and literally having a rate sheet where they're written out, and you just go, it's that. You just quote the rate sheet and leave it at that.
Right on. Emily, can you talk about the business side of things and how you navigated that? And you seem to be very up to speed on licensing, and that's a new opportunity, I think you mentioned, but just the idea of, again, doing your homework and knowing the business part of things.
Well, there's a lot that's already been said. I don't know how much more I can contribute. I mean, definitely know where you're at as an artist, as someone who can contribute a talent. Talk to people about what rates are, and I liked hearing about talk to people more successful than yourself. Usually at a certain point in my life, I feel like everybody was more successful than myself, because of just choices I decided to go have fun for, you know, about 5 years, and then came back and was like, oh, I guess I should think about money. And just luckily was around a bunch of people who were already making money. So I fell into some things, and then I had to get a little more proactive. I will admit I am not the best at talking about money. I like that idea of practicing, because it's true. I've had that experience with other things, and I understand the power of practicing to become comfortable with both your worth and leading with what you want and not settling. But, you know, I do have to practice it, because I'm not as active as the other guys, it seems. You know, like, I'm balancing a lot of hats these days as, you know, a musician, a mom, a household runner, you know, a dog mom of a very senior dog, you know, just random stuff. And I'm trying to live up to all of those commitments. So I understand that I can't constantly be trying to take on more music projects. They just won't get done. Something will fall through the cracks. So knowing what you can give at any one point in your life, and not take on too much and then not deliver at a level, and people like, oh, she used to be good, but now not so much, you know, because that will work against you, because people talk.
Definitely reputation.
Yeah, reputation, respecting people's times. If you say you're going to do something and then you come in short, you're kind of disrespecting them. And I'm trying to do just, and, you know, the other side is just like knowing what the standards are and not settling for reasons of fear, you know, fear-based decision-making. You know, we all struggle with it too, because you could be 100% like really on your game one day, and then for some reason, even if it's just like a bad review of something you put out, like can totally put you in a tailspin. And you just have to get past that. You have to get back to where you're, who are you? Of course, you're not these terrible things they said. You are who you are. You're going to keep doing the work, and it doesn't matter what they say. Just keep showing up, keep doing top work, keep aiming for higher. Respect your connections. Don't badmouth people. That's a big one. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like all that's probably already been said.
No, it's great.
Yeah, Tommy, if you can jump in on the business end of things and making sure that you're up to speed on that angle.
I mean, I just try to do each job. Once I say yes to a job, I mean, it's the same effort. I try to make no mistakes. Oh, they were good, but no mistakes. And my goal is just to get another job and to get more money the next time. And that's how it's going, and if you do play a lot, you do, learn at a fast pace, like I'm just doing it all day, every day. If I see a new thing, I email, or I re-email or whatever, or I call. Sometimes I never want to pick up the phone, but you'll realize sometimes that people won't blow you off on the phone. They're like, oh, hey, oh, thanks for calling. You know what I mean? So you always think these things in your head, but you got to not think those. Like, people aren't thinking that about you, or they're not thinking, oh, this guy's wasting my time. You just got to go out there and smile and be honest and put the work in. I like to show people that I'm working. When I play outside at the wineries, I don't need the shade thing, and I wear all black. So I'm dripping with sweat. So I make more, somebody gives me $50, So, I mean, I know it's a different thing that you guys do, Matt and Emily, but that's the world that I live in.
So when, from a practical standpoint, you play a winery gig, it goes really well. The next time they call you, or the next time, you're negotiating a rate, do you automatically bump it up a little bit? Is that kind of
no, it depends. I mean, if you feel like it's a good rate, you don't bump it up. If they offer you a bunch of gigs instead of just one, you just take a bunch, take 4 of them. You can't micromanage too much. You don't want to get in the way of stuff. You don't want to be too unusual like the other guy, but you still want to stand on your principles and know what you're worth. Every situation is different, really. But yeah, I'm sure if you put work in over a period of time, or you bring a lot of people, you're able to ask for more money. I mean, I usually do it at the end of the night after I've made my impressions, then we can talk. Then, hey, let's get back in. Can we make more money? I want to pay these guys, these guys are professionals that I, employ. They're top-notch guys, so it's just anything and everything. And you're just learning all the time, and it's just kind of different. But if you continue to make more money, I guess you're doing something okay. You're doing something good.
Right. So when we were developing this discussion, there was an item that Matt brought up that I thought was very intriguing, and I have 2 questions left. This one and then one more, and it was why being broke is the most destructive force to your creativity. So can you speak to that, Matt? That thought about being broke and how that is destructive to your creativity.
Yeah. I speak from experience, and I think there's nothing more stressful than, having your shelter threatened, or your food threatened, or, your basic necessities. And it can be a motivator, that'll work. But I mean, if there's a tiger chasing you, yeah, you'll start running. But it would be just better if you would just went for a run by yourself, without that motivation. So, yeah. And again, that goes back to that, like, struggling artist, man. And like, I'm in it for real. And it just doesn't work, And as a songwriter, I found that, heartache was good, but not when you're in it, like as the dust settles, then you can kind of reflect and you can kind of, when you're in it, you're just overwhelmed, So, remember Brian Wilson saying in an interview that there's times in your life that will be peaceful and those are really conducive to creativity. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. But he's saying that, yeah, that sounds good. So again, it's part of that struggling artist, and especially for me, rock and roll, you want to keep it real and all that. And it's just bullshit, it's nonsense. And I mean, it just is.
Yeah.
It ain't music. If there's no money, it ain't music.
Yeah.
It's a jam.
Yeah. Word. And the one thing I would add to
it's
that,
a jam.
yeah, the one thing I would add to that too is I think that is true about creativity. You know what I mean? So like it can motivate you to change your life if you're like, I just don't want to live like this anymore. But the creative thing there has to be some flow happening. And if things are tight, it's not good. It's not good for songwriting, and it's not good for a lot of what I do, which is just sit there with a pen and paper and set a timer for 15 minutes and go like, whatever my goal is, write it across the top and just let some ideas come. Maybe smoke a cigar, have a coffee, and be creative. If I'm stressed about paying bills or taking care of something, it's not flowing, man. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. So really you're talking about having some balance in your life and don't fall into that trap of, you don't need a real job to do music. You're selling out, and there's, you have to be struggling, and that's where you get your material and all that. And there has to be some stability so you can have the creativity.
Yeah, I mean, we're artists, but we're human beings first. So if our basic human needs are threatened or they're not secure, that ultimately that's not good. It's not sustainable anyway.
Mhm.
Yes. Right. Anyone else have anything to add to that? No? All right, I'm going to finish up with the last question is just what would be your advice to someone? And let's talk with a musician that's, maybe in their 20s and they're in a band, or maybe they're writing. And what's your biggest piece of advice regarding money for that person? Matt.
Well, if you're 20 and money, I would say honestly, like if you're 20, talk to somebody who owns a business. Talk to the guy who's got 3 trucks around town and he owns 3 bakeries. And go talk to that guy and just talk about business. You don't even have to like ask him for advice. Just talk to me about how you run your business. You're successful. You had a vision. Hopefully your dream was to have a bakery. Now you got 3. Tell me about that. And just let it sink in. Again, I wouldn't want to burden like a 20-year-old who's going to take over the world with, you need to set your rate and all that. I mean, you do, but there's some time in there to kind of make some noise and get some momentum happening. But to just understand just straight up business. Because I spoke to a Rotary Club, and these are all business owners. I talked about my career coaching, and their questions were like, so as a musician, what is the, the ratio between what you invest and what you get on your return? And like, they didn't give a shit about rock and roll or coolness or, oh, I played with this guy. It was just like, that's great. And I feel like they were asking for their kids too, but they wanted to know like the return on the investment. Like that's straight up business.
Yes.
And I was like, well, I could tell them about me, but just in general about the music business, I was like, you kind of got me on that one. So again, just get your mind into that world a little bit, because ultimately, hopefully you'll have the opportunity to actually put that stuff into action.
Right on. Emily?
Great points, Matt. I was thinking to myself, what was I doing in my 20s? And I brought it up before. I was having a lot of fun, but I was also playing music, but I wasn't worried about doing it for a living, because at the same time as I was having fun and doing other things, I was kind of finding out who I was. I had grown up with a very sort of strict family and was always like nose to the grindstone, top grades. You will, grades will lead you to success sort of mentality. And then when I decided I wasn't going to do anything that I majored in college to do, and I wanted to follow music, which I'd been doing as back as early as 12, it changed everything. So I sort of was just like, well, if all those things I thought were who I was no longer pertain to who I want to be, I have to figure out who I am and how I get to the person I want to be. And a lot of times that's not necessarily being particularly business minded. For me, it was trying on a lot of different career hats. I worked as a freelance writer. I sang in a lot of bands. I became a .com like code tester for early, websites, just like random stuff. And all of it led to some money to keep me still doing music, still writing, still recording sometimes. I was doing more live stuff then. But through time and trying on a bunch of different things, I found out what didn't work. And then I was able to hone in with each part that seemed extraneous that I took away. I could look at the things that were left and go, okay, what do I need to do to get next? And then you start getting into the particulars of stuff we've all talked about before, rates and talking to people about their business. But I think a big part of it is like, if you don't know who you are, like, how are you going to know how to run your business, and sometimes also just getting older clears a lot of stuff out of the way just by default. At least it has for me. In some ways it's added more, but those things have all helped me to get clarity on where I want to be and who I want to be perceived as within that community. And it helps me to run my business more effectively and not get affected by all the extra noise.
Yeah, great. And Tommy, what's your advice on money?
I think Matt's right. Don't be afraid to talk about money. I mean, if somebody wants to see your band play, even if you're just starting out, just an original band, there's, some people could call it work. Some people could call it just, we're practicing, getting ready for the show, but call it work. Ask about the money. And then if you do it once right and you leave with money, you know more about it and you can do it again. I think when you do get paid, it just puts more pressure on the situation, puts more pressure on you to be better. They expect more out of you. So I just think that, like, when I was first starting out in California, I wouldn't even talk about it. I just thought it was just like, oh yeah, we just don't get paid. We just go up and show up and play our hearts out or whatever. But I've seen bands that were doing this, same things that I was doing in the beginning, and they would talk about the money and they would kind of flip it on them and they would end up getting paid. So, it's just really about, it's like 60% business, 40%, art or whatever. I mean, your art is great, but you want to do your art more and more and more. And you can't do that unless you have no place to do it if you don't got a gig, so book yourself a gig. I mean, I know that sounds complicated or whatever if you don't know what you're doing, but it's worth something. Music is worth something. People will buy stuff. People will pay covers. It's entertainment. Yeah.
And I think we might be at a great spot with everything opening back up and people desperate for entertainment. In a pinch, the Zoom stuff, performances, virtual things were fine, here and there. And I saw some great shows. But I think people are going to be ready to see some live shows and pay to see shows, and venues are going to pay bands. And so I think it's a time right now to not be afraid, and because they want entertainment, and I think they'll be willing to pay for it. So I think it's a good opportunity right now.
Get it right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Start over. Yep.
Any last things of wisdom? You guys have been really great and creative, and really touching a lot of different topics that I think will be of great interest and helpful to folks watching this.
It was a pleasure meeting you, Emily. Good to see you again,
Oh,
Mr. Matt.
Yeah, likewise.
Great meeting you, Matt and Tommy. Thank you, Jeff, for having us.
Oh, you're
Thank
welcome,
you.
Emily. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Tommy. See you guys around.
Thank you.
Yeah, bud. Thank you so much.